Now, like I said before, InDesign is about multiple page publications, books, newspapers, magazines, catalogs, novels, things like that, where there's multiple pages to flip through. That's what InDesign is about. You even have a pages panel. But I don't want to jump too far ahead of myself, so let's lay out a one-page flyer. Keep it simple. So here in InDesign, I'm going to go to File, New Document. Okay, this is the old document layout. Right up here, the intent is for print. But now that I look at this, I really don't like this setup anymore. That was the legacy setup. So let me click cancel on that. I'll go to InDesign Preferences, General. And I'm not going to use the legacy new document dialog. We'll turn off that second button right there and click OK. Now let's check out the difference. New, File menu, New Document. And this is typical of like what you see in Illustrator and Photoshop. Okay, that looks a little better. So as usual, I come up to print. The page size I want is a letter size sheet of paper. That tells me right here my measurements are set to inches. It's 8.5 inches wide, 11 inches high. I want a vertical sheet of paper, and the number of pages I want is 1. Since we're going to be working on a full page flyer, I'm going to scroll down here to my margins, and you'll notice there is a chain, and it's darkened in. So all these value boxes are linked together. So what I want to do is go to the top margins, hit the down arrow until they all go down to 0. No margins on this page. I'm just going to start with a big blank sheet of paper, and I click Create. There we go. Command and minus. I can zoom out. So the InDesign layout has one blank sheet of paper, a little bit of workspace on the sides. There's my Pages panel. I've got one sheet of paper here. And what I want to do is go to my layers, just like Adobe Illustrator. In fact, I'll tear the layers panel out as I'm used to doing. I'm going to double click the name layer 1 and call that page background textures. Okay, I don't want my flyer to just be on a plain white sheet of paper. I'm going to use this bottom layer as page background textures. And what I want to do is drop in a photo. And the way InDesign works is pretty much like Illustrator. You can't go to File and Open. That means open another Adobe InDesign file. Okay, we are in an InDesign file. What I want to do is just like Illustrator, File and Place, or Command D for a document. But they stole that from Illustrator as well. So File and Place, because I want to place a photo on this page. Okay, this is going to take me out to whatever random folder. So I'll click my desktop, and I'm going to come down to my demo files, week 16. Right here, True TV Mugshots InDesign Flyer. And I want to make a flyer for, like it says, True TV. True TV is all about crime, so we're going to do all the celebrity mugshots. Okay, but to start off, I want the old paper background. And you'll notice when you look at that, it is a horizontal sheet of paper. So when I click Open, InDesign will show me a preview of what I'm about to get. And I'm going to start up here, a little bit higher, and then I'm going to click and drag, and you'll notice that I cannot drag straight down to the corner. It's going to come in at its proper proportions. So you want to watch out for this, because if you let go, well, that didn't really cover the sheet of paper, did it? Okay, if I go to Edit, Undo, it's still in memory. If I click and drag, I have to go past the edge of the paper like that. But that really didn't fit either. So I'll go to Edit, Undo. And if I really wanted to fill out this sheet, I would start way up here above the sheet of paper, click and drag all the way down below the sheet so I can guarantee that I cover the entire space. Okay, now that's because I dragged that out bigger than the sheet of paper from the start. Hit delete and let me show you how InDesign works when you don't drag it big enough. So I'll go to File, Place again, or Command D. I'm going to come down and grab Old Paper Background 1 once more, and I'm going to open that. And then from this upper left corner, I'm going to click and drag to about right there. Didn't quite go big enough. Okay, so here's the tricky part of InDesign. Once you lay out a photo, you've got all these little nodes on the corners, the sides, the top and the bottom. You are putting photos into frames, just like a painting goes into a frame. These little containers are frames in InDesign. The problem here is if I wanted my photo to be bigger and I drag a corner like this, it'll just leave the photo behind. The box gets bigger, but the photo remained the same. Okay, and this gets tricky in InDesign. So I'm going to go to Edit, Undo Resizing the Box, because I need to resize not only the box, but what's in the box. So here's the trick. You go to the corner, press and hold for a second, and now hold Command and Shift. And now when I drag, darn it, didn't do it. Okay, when things don't work, you're going to drive yourself crazy. So obviously that didn't work either. So I'll go to Edit, Undo. So here is the final trick, and I guarantee this one will work. You have to hold Command and Shift first. Then click and drag the corner, and when you let go, it will resize. Command and Shift, drag the corner. But notice I don't even see the results until I let go of my mouse. So I'm going to hold Command and Shift, click and drag the corner way up here again to resize the box and the photo. And I want to show you a trick that is definitely going to help. Okay, like I said before, if you hold Command and Shift first, then you click and drag the corner, you're going to enlarge it, but you're not going to see the results until you physically let go of the mouse. So here's a visual method of working. I hold Command and Shift, then I press and hold on the mouse for a second, and now after delaying for 1 second, I've got a preview. So now I'm dragging with my mouse and Command and Shift. We'll go right down to the bottom of the page like that. I let go of the mouse first, then the keyboard. Now I could actually see my artwork enlarging as I dragged it. But the problem is the page ends right here. And mine goes way over to there because I had to bring in a horizontal sheet of paper for a vertical sheet of paper in InDesign. I also don't like the fact that I have a lot of this brown over here and none of it over here because it's way off to the side. So I'm just going to push the whole box. And the key here, let me undo that, is do not hit the circle. Okay, this is called a content grabber. And what it does is it allows you to pick the photo inside the frame and literally accidentally tear it out of the frame. So what I always tell people is if you want to move a photo, don't move it from the center. You're going to screw this up. So I just go down near a corner, click and drag. We'll slide it over kind of centered. So I got a little bit off to this side, a little bit off to that side. And now, just like Photoshop, this box is going to act like a crop tool. So I'll just click and drag the side to the edge of the page right there. Click and drag that side to the edge of the page right there. And we get a nice, dull, yellowed sheet of paper. All that brown is still over here. It's just cropped out. Okay. For my advertisement, my flyer, I want a little bit more than just what I see here. So I'm going to click outside, and just to show you really quick, every time you hover over a box, you're going to get this circle, your content grabber. Try to avoid it. Okay, don't hit the center, because let me show you what it does. If I wanted to move this photo over, notice I can click and drag and tear the photo right out of the frame. See, the frame still goes around the page, but I shoved my photo out of the box. Okay, and I see people do that all the time. So avoid the content grabber. I'll just go to edit and undo that. Okay, that's the main thing. Avoid the center if you can. So I'll click outside. I like this, but I want a darker texture at the top. So once I have clicked outside, I'm going to hit Command D, or File menu and place. That will take me to the same job folder, and I'll take old paper background 2. Again, we've got another long horizontal image. So I'm just going to start here in the upper left, drag way out here across the page, and I'll drag about 3/4 of the way down like that. Okay, again, got a big rectangle. So I'm going to take the right side and just crop all that out. We'll just pull that edge back to the edge of the page right there. Click outside and you can see what we've got here, but I don't want it just magically stopping with a hard edge. Okay, I want this photo to fade into the gold instead of a hard cut bottom. So I'm going to click on this photo, not on the center, just near a corner. And then I'm going to come up to Object, since I've clicked on an object on the page. Come down to Effects. And notice the effects are pretty much the same effects you had in Photoshop. But there's a couple of new ones. One of them is called a gradient feather. Okay, so I'm going to activate that. And right here, you want to turn on your preview so you can see what the gradient feather is going to do. And right here, this black represents the solid part of the photo over here on the left. The empty house, the checkerboard pattern, transparency on the right, is where I'm getting transparency on the right over here. Well, I want it to be solid at the top and fade away at the bottom. So I'm going to drag my angle slider down. And as I drag that down, you can see it happening on the page, right, live as you do it. Okay, this is good at the top, but I want a little bit more darkness to come down. So I'm going to take my black house, pull it to the right a little bit more. You can see how I'm starting to get a little bit more heaviness here. I don't want my photo to just fade right at the bottom, so I'm going to pull this away from the edge a little bit. There we go. And this little diamond represents the 50% mark. So I can pull it a little more to the right or a little more to the left and just get a fine little sweet spot here, and that looks pretty good. Okay, but what I also want to do is make sure this top dark photo blends into this bottom sheet of paper. And I can do that right up here, settings for object. And let's see, do I have that? Nope, these are all the individual settings. Let's click on the word transparency. See, I always forget that because notice how every one of these has a checkbox, but transparency doesn't. I keep forgetting. You can click on that, even though it doesn't have a checkbox. Very deceiving there. Hope the guys at Adobe get that. So here's what I want to do. When I click on transparency, I have Photoshop blending modes. Same blending modes we had in Photoshop. So I'm going to set it to multiply. And that will kind of soak it in and darken it into that backdrop. I like this background. So I'm going to click OK. And here's the other thing you can start to look at. You'll notice this photo is in its own little frame. Click down here. That photo is in its own little frame. Click outside and I can see the edges of the frame. Okay, frames are always going to have an outline. These outlines right now are blue because I'm on a blue anchor point highlighted layer. Just like in Illustrator, you can change the color of the anchor points, but we're not worried about that right now. I just don't want to see a blue line. So what I'm going to do is, this is called your preview mode with outlines. Okay, I'm going to hit W. That is your true preview mode. It's right up here. View, and you've got overprint. Let's see, W. Now I just forget where it's at. There you go, presentation. Okay, W. So I just want W for preview. Okay, if I hit W again, that's outlines. You can see the edges of your boxes or frames. I don't need to look at the edges, so I'm going to hit W. True preview. This is what I would get if I were to print right now. And I like that page background, so on my layers, I'm going to lock the layer. The background is done. I can't accidentally click on it anymore. It's like gluing it down on the page. What I would do, since you're going to turn this in, is save your progress now. Just call this last name, first name, True TV Flyer. And then you can come back to the video. Okay, I've waited long enough. So yeah, pause the video if you have to. Save your progress. And now what I want to do is add my mug shots. So I'm going to add a brand new blank layer. I'm going to double click the name of that layer and call that mug shots. And I'll click OK. Now in order to see this more clearly, it's going to be hard to see on this textured background. I'll just turn off the eyeball for the bottom layer. And I want to put in a mugshot, so Command D, or File menu and Place. And you can see in our job folder we have 16 different mugshots. But just as a test, let's just take a look at the first one, Charlie Sheen. And when I click Open, if I wanted to just throw in the entire photo at its normal size, I could click. You'll notice one photo is bigger than the entire sheet of paper. Okay, but I have 16 photos. So obviously I'm going to delete that one. And the other great thing is you can place multiple photos at the same time. So I'm going to hit Command D again for a document. I'm going to click once on photo 1, come down and shift click photo 16. I'm going to load 16 photos at once. When I click Open, in parentheses in the upper left corner, there's a tiny little icon of a picture, so it's letting InDesign know I'm about to drop in a bunch of photos. To the right of that, in blue type, it says 16. I have 16 photos loaded into memory. But again, just the first one was too big for the sheet of paper. So what I'm going to do is, as I lay out photos, I'm going to design a grid. It's called a Contact Sheet Cascade. So here's how it works. We have 16 photos. So before I click with my mouse, I'm going to look down on my keyboard and hold Command and Shift, and you will see a grid next to your cursor. Okay, you hold Command and Shift, click and drag. So I'll start right about in here. That's where I want the corner of the first photo to be. Hold Command and Shift, click and drag. And I want the last one end right about there, in that bottom right corner. Now let's go right there. Okay, let's make it a little smaller. But here's the trick. You do not let go of your mouse, because if you look at that grid, there's only 9 boxes. We have 16 photos. Okay, so I'm going to let go of the keyboard only. Now, I still have the grid. So while I'm still holding the mouse, I'm going to hit my up arrow to add another row of boxes. And then I'm going to hit my right arrow key on my keyboard to add another column of boxes. So now I have 16 boxes, one box for each photo. Okay, I drag down to here. I'm going to leave a little bit of room on the right, so we'll drag it down to about right here. And then when I let go of the mouse, pop, 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 every photo fills the box. Now they're not filling the boxes completely. Notice here when I turn this on and I zoom in, Macaulay Culkin is filling the box from the top to the bottom, not the sides. Okay, every one of these photos is pretty much not in the right proportions. They're all filling it closely, but you can see there's room on the sides. So here's what I have to do. I'll zoom out a little bit more. Then I'm going to turn off the bottom layer again. Take my black arrow, click outside. It's hard to see how much they're missing here. So what I'm going to do is reselect all of them. And then I'm going to click on the stroke at the bottom of my toolbox. Okay, way over to the right, if you don't see it, you can come down to swatches and tear that out. If you don't see your swatches, for some reason they got turned off or whatever, you can go to Window menu, Color, and Swatches. So here's my little stroke option. I'm going to click Paper. There is no color called white in InDesign. It's called paper because we usually design on a white sheet of paper. Okay, so I've added a white stroke around these boxes. You really can't see it right now because it's white on white. So I'm going to turn on my bottom layer, turn on the eyeball, and right up here, this is the thickness of my stroke. It says it's a 1-point stroke, and as you've seen in Illustrator, 1-point strokes are pretty thin. So I'm going to hit the up arrow and make it, let's make it 4 points. Click outside, you see we've got a nice bold outline. Okay, especially when I do the outline, I can zoom back in and notice none of the photos fill the boxes correctly. So here's this simple trick. You're going to take your black arrow. Now, this time you will hover over the center of the photo. Click it once. Now we've isolated the photograph. And all you're going to do is go to the corner of your photo, hold Shift and Option. Shift so you don't distort the photo, Option so you keep it centered. And you're going to drag it out until you just slightly overlap the sides of that white stroke. So now your photo will completely fill the box. Okay, and I'm going to do that multiple times here to really get the hang of it. Click the center, Shift and Option, drag the corner. Click the center, Shift and Option, and drag the corner. Click the center. Now he's got a really small face in this photo, so I got to hold Shift and Option, drag a really big photo like that. So then I can pull him back down into view right there. There we go. Now I click the next one. I got to click down outside. There we go. Deselect. Now I click the center, Shift key and Option key will drag it out. Click the center, Shift and Option. I love that mugshot. Pee Wee Herman, darn. Click the center, Shift and Option. Click the center, hold Shift and Option. Click the center, hold Shift and Option, drag a corner. It's the same thing over and over. Click the center, Shift key and Option key, just to overlap the edge of the border. Click the center, Shift and Option, just to overlap the edge of the border. So we know our photo will completely fill the box. Click, Shift and Option, come down here, click, Shift key and Option key and drag the corner, click, Shift key and Option key, click, Shift key and Option key, click the center, Shift key and Option key. Now I can just click down below deselect that last photo, and I'll option click with my magnifying tool to zoom out so I can see the entire grid. And now I can do some other design adjustments. Like I don't like how her head is a little high here, so I'm going to click on the circle and just hit the down arrow key. You can see how I'm pushing her way down into the frame, or I hit the up arrow. I'll move her back, kind of center each face like that. He's a little small, so I'll hit Shift and Option, maybe blow up his face a little bit bigger and move him down. Okay, click, move him down. So again, when I want to manipulate what's in the box, I click the center, I can move that down, click the center, move her photo down, click the center on Macaulay, move him back up. There we go. Click the center, move that down. And that looks pretty good. Got some nice headshots that are pretty well balanced in this layout. Now I don't need my swatches anymore, so I'm just going to pull the word swatches and put it right back down here next to color, kind of tuck it out of the way. And now that I'm looking at this, I think these outlines are a little bit too thick. So first, save your progress now that you got a good chunk of this flyer going. Then up here in the upper left, I'm going to click and drag over all 16 photos. Right up here is the thickness of those outlines. So instead of 4, I'm going to hit the down arrow, make them 3. Okay, and I'm going to hit Command and minus on my keyboard to zoom out, and you'll notice my grid. I have the same amount of space across the top and about the same amount of space down the left, but I got a lot of space over here. Okay, so this grid is kind of out of balance, and there's not a lot of room between each photo. So I'm going to show you one of the funnest tricks here. I'm going to click and drag over all 16 photos again. Then on the bottom right, I'm going to press and hold for a second without moving. Now on my keyboard, while I'm holding down the mouse, I'm going to hold down the space bar and now pull the mouse, and I can separate my grid, make it tighter like that, or pull it apart like that. So each photo has a little bit of breathing room in between. I let go of the mouse, let go of the space bar, and I've instantly redesigned my grid. Okay, the whole thing about InDesign is these things where pause for a second, then do this, pause here. Okay, it does slow things down, but I've got a nice grid layout because I didn't get what I wanted when I first did the contact sheet. But there's tons of keyboard shortcuts, so just keep that in mind with InDesign. It's a very technical know-how kind of program, a lot of keyboard shortcuts, but man, when you know the shortcuts, you can design on the fly pretty darn quick. So here's why I separated them. I'm going to select them all and then go to Object menu, down to Effects, and drop Shadow. Okay, here's my preview. I've already applied it. Maybe I want the distance right here. Just hit the up arrow. Just push them a little bit further away from each box. I'll keep all the rest at default. The size, which is the blurriness, the opacity, which is the darkness, but I think that looks fine. And I click OK. Same drop shadows you had in Photoshop. Okay, I'm going to hit Command and minus. There's our grid. And now I've got room at the bottom for a couple other graphics that I want to add to this flyer. So first, save your progress as an InDesign file. And I forgot to show you that. So if I go to File and Save, okay, you're just saving an InDesign document. You really have no other choice. Okay, it's InDesign. Just make sure you save it in the folder. I'll just click Cancel on that. And here's what I want to do. I've done my page background, locked the layer. Now I've designed my grid. And before I do this, I want to do something else with this grid. I want to make it look a little more interesting because you'll notice every photo is pretty much a square. all four corners are sharp. Okay, I want my boxes to look a little more interesting. So I'm going to reselect all 16. And again, I'm going to go to Object menu and come down to Corner Options. Okay, in the Corner Options dialog box here, you want to turn on your preview. And you want to make sure this is a broken chain. See, if I click and they're all linked together, all four corners will still be the same. So I want to break that chain. It has a line through it. Okay, this little tiny blue dot is telling me what corner I'm looking at. So you could basically look at this and say upper left, upper right, lower right, okay? I want the upper left corners to be round. So I'll click this and come down to a rounded corner. Then I'll hit, for this field, the up arrow. And I'll round them to about ½ inch, 0.5. See, only that upper left corner on all the boxes now has a softer look. And to balance this, I'm going to go with the lower right corner. Also make that rounded. Also hit the up arrow until that one is 0.5. And I click OK. So now I've got these unique kind of almost like teardrop kind of shapes to my boxes. This looks kind of cool. It's unexpected. It's different. Okay, that one's done. I lock the layer. Save your progress. Okay, and I'll zoom out once so we can see this. Now I create a third brand new layer. I'm going to double click the name and call that Police Tape. I want to put a little line of police tape since this show is all about true crime, true TV. I've got a photo of a line of police tape. So I want the photo to come in from the left and bleed all the way across the page to the right. So I'm going to hit Command D for a document. And in the job folder, I have tape 3, large. It's a JPEG. So the thing that sucks about that is it's going to come in with a big white background. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open. And your photos are always going to come in from their upper left corner. That's why the icon is in the upper left. So I'll start just outside the edge of the page, right about here. Click and drag all the way across, just past the right side of the page, like that. And I kind of like how that landed. If you don't, you can move it up and down to see where it goes. But I kind of like how that's just coming off the edge. That's going off the edge. But the white box just looks ridiculous. Okay? I just want the yellow police tape. I don't want the background. So in order to work in InDesign, you have to understand your file formats from Photoshop. JPEG files are not the best to bring into an InDesign file because they have white backgrounds. If you've got just a flat photo that fills a box, that's fine. That can be a JPEG. But if you're looking at a photo of an object, like a police tape, you don't want the background and the tape. You just want the tape. So JPEGs are not cutting it here. So here's a great trick. I'm going to click once on this photo. Again, not on the center. Then I'm going to hold my Control key on my keyboard and click. And then I'm going to come down and say Edit with my Photoshop. There's my police tape. Okay, back here in Photoshop, let me pull that into view. I cannot have a background layer because if I do, it's going to fill with a color. So on my Layers panel, I'm going to double click the word background. We'll call that tape. Then, in order to select flat areas of color, I take my magic wand. Okay, I'll just make sure I reset all my tools here. Let me do that. Reset all tools back here in Photoshop, just so I'm doing this right. Okay, with my magic wand, click on the white wall, hit delete. There's my transparent or invisible background. Click on the white, hit delete. Command D to deselect. So now I truly have a police tape with no background behind it. Okay, the problem is I cannot save this again as a JPEG because it'll just put a white background right back on. So I go to File, Save As, and I want to save it in the job folder. Okay, you're going to save it as a Photoshop file with layers. That's it. That is the secret. Save it in your flyer folder as a Photoshop file with layers. You don't even need to change the name. Just the computer needs to recognize that is a layered Photoshop file. So I'll click Save, and I'll click OK. And I'll close Photoshop up here in the red button. Click that. Click back on InDesign, and great. It didn't do a thing. Okay? You have to understand why it didn't fix that. So right up here, you have a Pages panel, and more important, a Links panel. Okay, I'm going to come down to this little bar right here and just pull this down so I can look at a list of all my photos here. And this police tape is still looking at the JPEG. The JPEG's not right. So if I click on the photo, it activates it in the list, and now there is a chain right here called Relink. So I'm going to click that. Now it's going to say, well, if you don't like the JPEG, go find the photo that you want us to put in there. So I go to my desktop, go down to my week 16 here, my InDesign project folder, and instead of using the JPEG, which has the big white wall behind it, I'll use my Photoshop file. Watch my police tape right below when I relink it. There we go. Awesome. That's what I was looking for. The police tape, not the police tape with a white wall. And now that works because I've changed it from a JPEG, which has a white wall, to a Photoshop file which has no background to it. Great. I want this to have a little more depth. So, Object menu, Effects, Drop Shadow. Okay, that drop shadow is kind of weak, so I'm going to set the distance right up here. We'll hit the up arrow a few more times. I'll set the size, hit the up arrow, and soften that up a little bit more right there. So when it's lifted higher, you're not going to see as defined an edge. And that looks pretty cool for me. I'll click OK. I like how I got a little bit of overlap right there. Good. In fact, I could click this and hit the up arrow. Overlap ML a little bit more. There we go. All right, another layer done, another layer that's locked. Now I'm going to do my final layer here, and I will call that one True TV Logo and Type. I'll click OK. Hit Command D for a document. Takes me right back to my job folder again. And I have the True TV logo. I'm going to click open, and now I just have to click and drag. So I'll start right up here on the D for Do Not Cross. Click and drag, and now I'll let go of the mouse. There we go. Take my black arrow, just avoid the center, and I'll just move this over here so it's kind of away from the police tape. Right about there. That looks really stupid. It's got a big white background. Well, that wasn't a JPEG, it was a GIF file, but it's still an image made for the web. So it's going to come in with a white background. So instead of bringing that back to Photoshop, deleting a white background, resaving it as a Photoshop, I've already showed you how to do that with the police type. I'm going to show you another way to get rid of white, and that is with a blending mode. Object menu, Effects, Transparency, turn on my preview, and the same thing that you learned from week 1 in Photoshop, multiply mode makes white transparent. Click OK. Much quicker shortcut. There we go. True TV. Now I can click on it, hit my arrow keys, and just kind of move that down comfortably in that space. And the last thing I want to do is add a little headline. So I'm going to zoom back in right here. Got a little space right in here. So the only difference in InDesign is, unlike the other programs, you cannot click and then start typing. InDesign does not work that way. Everything goes in a box or a frame. Photos go in frames. This crime police tape went in a big rectangular frame. This True TV logo is in a frame. The page backgrounds were in frames. Type goes in frames. Just think boxes. Everything needs to be boxes in InDesign. So I'm going to take my type tool, start here, click and drag a box. I'll go right over the yellow because you're not going to see the box anyway. You're just going to see the type that's in that box. And I'll say, make up a headline like the famous Hollywood stories you didn't know! Exclamation point. Okay, now I'm going to highlight that type. That's pretty small. And way, way, way up here is the size of my type. Right next to that is the font. You can pick whatever you want. I'm just going to keep it on Minion. Again, this is just a quick introduction to InDesign. So I'll highlight the size and hit the up arrow a few times. Let's go maybe 18 points right there. Click outside. The famous Hollywood stories. And I want that on another line, like the famous Hollywood stories, and then the next line, you didn't know. So I'm going to take my type tool, highlight the space between stories and you, hit delete, and then return. I'm going to force it onto the next line. That's also giving me a little bit of extra room over here. So now I can highlight my type, highlight the size, and hit the up arrow. Let me make it 20 points right there. Click outside. See, you don't see the box. The famous Hollywood stories you didn't know. Well, great, but what time is the show? Take my type tool, click inside the box. I can just click over here at the end, hit return, and say Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Now, I don't want people to miss that, so I'm going to highlight those words, Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Come up to the name of the font. Here's Minion Pro. Here's the style of the font. And I'll make that bold italic, just so it stands out a little bit more. Click outside, hit Command and 0. And there we go. There is our one-page flyer ad. Showing you how to drop in and blend photos. Showed you how to drop in multiple photos at the same time. Apply strokes, apply corner effects. How to update photos from JPEGs to Photoshop files. How to add text. You learned a lot about InDesign with just this little one-page flyer. Now, I'm sure the design could be better. That's not what I'm looking at here. I'm looking at, here's how the program works. Okay, and if you really wanted to see this, hit the letter W and look at all those frames. Boxes, 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 box, 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 box. Link, 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 links. I don't want to work like that, so W. Much easier on the eye. Okay, you're going to save your InDesign file one more time, and then the thing about Adobe InDesign is if you were to turn in your InDesign file, you would have to give me every file. The InDesign file and all 16 photos and the police tape photo and the logo and the page backgrounds. I don't want all that. Okay, what you're going to do to turn it into me so I can see what you laid out is go to File, Export. When you export an InDesign file after you're done, you can save the format as a PDF for print purposes. You don't have to rename it. Still will show up as last name, first name, true, TV, flyer. But now you send me one PDF file, not 30 files for this. Okay, just make sure it's a high quality PDF. And that's it. Okay, I'm going to click cancel. I'm not going to save mine, but on yours, the way you're going to turn it into me is not an InDesign file. You're going to save it and then export it as a high quality PDF for print. Okay, there's your introduction to InDesign.